BirthIsNot.com. No material on this podcast should be considered medical advice. Birth is not a medical event.
Welcome to Indie Birth series of podcasts here on iTunes, Taking Back Birth. Hi everyone, Marin here today with a sensitive subject and a very special guest to share her story. I'm here with Sabrina Wolf Moon, a friend from Canada who we've actually never met in real life, but it feels like we have somehow. The internet is good at that. And we've talked, I think, a lot over the years and have many things in common around birth and beliefs. But Sabrina wanted to share her story today of a recent loss. And the more we talked about maybe the way this would go, of course, you never know how it will go, but we thought that we just wanted to bring attention today in whatever way we could through Sabrina's story and maybe even a little bit of mine here and there to the sacred side of loss and miscarriage. So we'll see where this takes us, but exploring these things that women don't seem to talk about unless they're together. So we're just going to pretend we're together, and Sabrina's going to go ahead and share what's important to her today. So thank you for being here today, Sabrina.
And thank you for having me, Marin. Yes, we've known each other through Facebook, and the connections we feel are often very kindred. So even though we have never met in person, it really feels like we share a common spirit and a common way of, making our way through life, I guess. I'm very honored to be here on your show today. I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and I love the work you do, and I think it's really important that we do keep sharing, keep sharing knowledge, because one of the most beautiful quotes I came across was that true power is shared power, and true power through knowledge and speaking and sharing it. What more can you ask for? Really,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And especially around this issue, right? Like death and, babies dying and loss. Most people don't really want to talk about it too much. Maybe
No,
want
they
to push it
don't.
under the
And
rug and not honor it the way you have.
unfortunately, it's a huge part of the circle, the circle of life and death. Unfortunately, or not unfortunately, really, is a part of that cyclical nature that the earth and nature herself mirrors to us every day. I mean, look at the time of year we're in right now, and we're going to be talking about loss at the time of year where we're heading into darkness, where unless you're on the other side of the equator, I guess,
Right.
the leaves are falling, and what is nature mirroring to us? It is that letting go. It's letting go, letting go, letting go, so things can be reborn. And it's not an easy thing, and it probably will never be easy, but it's something you can become more mindful of and just, practice letting go. I mean,
Yeah.
it's everywhere. You can't hide from it.
No, you're right. Right. The life-death cycle is in our daily day, in our, each hour.
Right.
So it's just something we've chosen as a collective to not really look at. But once you're in the seat of, having death within you, literally, I think these things become so much more clear that this is the truth.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think maybe our more ancient cultures, indigenous cultures, they have always honored, that death part of life, because I think they understood that it's not the end. It is a change of worlds. It's a change of, it's a shift in consciousness. And although the physical body is no longer there, life does go on. And, this is sacred space because your physical body, and whether your spirit, lives on beyond this physical realm, this experience is like a one-time experience as, you and as
Sure.
me.
Yeah, for sure.
So even though, you might be open to reincarnation and past lifetimes, I mean, it doesn't take the sacredness away that is you, who you are
Right.
today.
Right,
It,
right.
it really doesn't. So I think Western culture is always kind of hidden. It has hidden death so much from us that we are really uncomfortable with it. I
Hmm.
remember, being a little girl, and I knew I came home from kindergarten. I was still living in Germany at the time, and my great grandma was just crying on the couch, and I just knew instantly something big had happened. And my great grandfather, had passed away. And after that memory, there's nothing, because I wasn't allowed at the funeral. I do not remember anything after except that moment. And the funeral and that part of death was kind of hidden from me, and I always kind of wondered why. Like,
Yeah.
why was that so hidden from me, right?
Yeah, and it's something that goes back, right? It's generations deep in
Right.
many of our bodies and our DNA to just reject the idea. So I think
Hmm.
especially in pregnancy, right, it can be so shocking to be
Mm.
in that situation. Although we know intellectually, that miscarriage really is pretty common.
Yeah.
We don't expect we don't expect it necessarily. But why don't you start telling us about this pregnancy or this spirit baby or however it feels right to you to talk about it?
Well, the whole thing was really interesting because, you kind of know when there's something lingering. And after I had my fourth baby, Rowan, and I had my first unassisted birth with him, which was funny because I always thought you and me would be talking about,
About our Rowans?
his, Rowan's unassisted birth. But at the
Yeah.
time I had really crappy internet. I didn't have Skype, so I mean, it just never came about. But I did share his
Yes.
story on my blog that I kind of, it's very leisurely and relaxed way of writing, very sporadic, but it's been up for about 2 years, and it was just really a place for me to kind of put my thoughts and my feelings and just kind of get it out,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
not have it just kind of in the ethers all around me. It was just somewhere to ground it and give birth to some of my stories. I guess whether people read it or not wasn't really a huge concern to me. But so I find it interesting that we find ourselves here now, and that we're going to be talking about, an unassisted miscarriage is what, really it was, because I approached it the same way as I would approach birth, and in that deep knowing that my body and my spirit and the spirit of this child they just knew what to do, and all I needed to do was just try to find a space within myself to allow it to happen and not to get in the way.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
I mean, the biggest thing is that we get into our own way. We get into the way of what our body knows that it needs to do. Because I don't know, we would just that part of us that's almost conditioned with resistance. Maybe it comes from fear of the unknown, fear of, I'm not sure, just fear, I guess. Because if we didn't feel fear, we would feel trust. And if we feel trust, we would know that our bodies always know
Right.
what they need to do. And so
Yeah.
this started about 3 months ago, I guess. And I kind of have always, after Rowan's birth, felt like I thought maybe I'd feel complete. Maybe, yeah, I'm done. People would be like, "Are you done? Are you gonna have any more children?" I'm like, what a question. It's like,
I
my
know.
attitude to life is just open. I am open to life, and I trust that when I need to make a decision, that my intuition and I'll have that inner guidance to give me the answer. And
Exactly.
I didn't really feel done. And at the same time, I felt like, well, at this time I'm content. Like I'm happy with, having my four children. Like, this is good.
Right.
But I would never be like, yeah, I'm done totally. Like,
Yeah, that's very final. I've never
it
felt
is
that
very,
way, and I've never known how to answer that question myself either,
yeah.
so I totally relate to that.
Well, sometimes for kicks and, I would just, answer differently depending on who's asking. So, either, kind of a smart ass comment, or
Sure.
just, I don't know, just, whatever response felt appropriate at the time. But yeah, nothing final. I mean, there are no absolutes in life, period. So it's like, I don't really feel like I need I need to make that decision or share it with anyone. We'll see what happens.
Sure. I mean, I think you feel the same way. I don't ultimately feel that that's up to me. And so when
Mhm.
people ask that, I find it to be a very arrogant question almost, for me to say definitively. I mean, who knows what the universe has in store or,
Well,
it's not really ours to say.
no, no, the worst was like, my partner get, asked whether he was gonna, get fixed or whatever, and I'm just like, poor you, like what a question
I
to
know.
deal with, whether you're gonna get, snipped or vasectomy or fixed, whatever they would say, and it's like I would never ask that of you, it's just like it's not like he'd ever ask me to, change my physiology in order to prevent something from
Sure.
happening.
Sure.
And
Sure.
and it is, like I think when side topic is birth control, but I mean, knowing your body and knowing your cycles is it's a huge step
Sure.
to planning your life, but know
Exactly.
that there's only so much planning that you can do. I mean, we know the stories of people who've tried to prevent in pretty incredible ways, and they still end up getting pregnant,
Oh
or
my
there are
gosh,
people
yeah.
that get pregnant who were told you can't have babies, and maybe parts of them lets it go. Let's, when you hold on too tight to something, sometimes, you almost prevent it from maybe happening because you're so attached to it. And as soon as you just kind of ease into being that flow, wow, all of a sudden it happens, right? And these are supposed to be these absolutes that we're supposed to adhere by, and I don't believe in them.
Yeah.
There's so much magic all around us. I mean, just becoming pregnant to me is uh, one of the most magical things that could happen. I mean, the
Sure.
alchemy required to create life is mind-blowing to me. Like
Yes, yes.
I just can't really get my mind around it. It's my mind is too small to grasp the extraordinariness of creating life. Like that is just amazing to me.
Yeah.
So
We know nothing. That's what I always come back to. We pretty much know nothing about anything, and that's
no,
one
we
of the
might have an
greatest
inkling though.
examples.
Maybe a little inkling, but too difficult. We just don't have the words to really even come close to expressing some of these things. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, we do
Yeah.
know nothing,
Did
and yet we know
you?
everything. I don't know.
Right. No,
So,
exactly. But like in that sense, knowing everything in the sense that we do, did you know kind of what this soul was coming for? Did you have a feeling about any of it before? I'm just so curious about that because I feel like a lot of women, if they're being really open about loss, and certainly not everybody, it's not like it
hmm
has to be, but there's something different. There's something different
right.
about the whole experience.
Well, let me tell you, the entire event around even conception, like I will not go into detail here, but
Yeah.
we conceived when you think physiologically, biologically, I shouldn't have conceived
Right.
because it happened around when I was supposed to be expecting my moon time. I was not ovulating at the time. So I mean, right from the get-go, it was very mysterious. The
Hmm.
entire the
Yeah.
entire
Yeah.
beginning of our journey was it
Hmm.
was very mysterious. Like, and I don't have the answer for how I was able to conceive while not ovulating. I do know in lunar ovulation. Do you
Sure.
know? Is it
Hmm.
called
Yeah.
lunar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I always found that fascinating because out of all my four babies, I think my biological ovulation, my monthly ovulation occurred very close or even with my lunar ovulation.
Hmm.
Like if I can track their conceptions properly, it's like they lined up and made me
Yeah.
like
Well, that's
super
super
fertile.
fertile. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. Hmm.
no doubt. And this time, like it wasn't that close to my lunar ovulation because, of course, I was gonna check that right
Right.
away. Like, oh, but I just don't know. It just kind of occurred, and I have a friend who's been really dear to me since I was about 17. I met her, and she was she does massage, and she also does psychic readings in town here, which, I live in a really small community. So it took her a long time to kind of come out and say she does psychic readings, because we live in a community that has a, high population of, religious people. And sometimes that word just,
Right.
doesn't, do it justice. But this woman is so authentic, and my first reading with her I had when I was about 17, and it really validated everything I've always felt since being little. And just the information that's come through, I mean, you can't make this up.
Right.
You really can. And her experience began with a friend of hers who was also a medicine man, and I guess she has also written a book, and right now I really just can't even remember what her book is called. So I'm sorry, Dawn, for that. But so her experience began with, this medicine man basically clearing her energy and just kind of opening her up. And after that, she was able to tune into spirit, around her. And she had, even her family, her sons, I remember she telling me his story, like he was so skeptical, right? And he kept testing her and asking her questions she just couldn't possibly know the answers to. And his mind was blown when she was able to give him the right answer. So with Dawn, I asked her about the conception of this baby, and she kind of said that sometimes spirits can, put their hands in there and kind of make things happen that almost kind of, transcend our physical laws.
Sure.
Right? And I was just like, wow, okay. So, I mean, we can do the best to prevent certain things, like I said, or have our plan, and our egos are really happy with these plans that we make, right? Because they're like, yeah, I'm in control now, so I'm making this plan from A to Z, and nothing will get in my way. But, there's that mysterious component of spirit, and sometimes it has other plans.
Yeah. So how did the pregnancy start to kind of shape around this mystery, before it was over?
Well, I realized it slowly. It was our first camping trip that we finally got to take as a family. And I went to one of my favorite lakes that's in this area. It's huge, it's ancient. And I just kind of wanted to, go somewhere and unplug for a while and get kind of out of that, regular mom routine, and it just get everyone to kind of unplug and, take a break and just be in nature. And I just kind of, over that week of camping, and it was so beautiful because we were alone at this campground the entire time, which was just such a blessing. And I don't know, watching the stars and meteors, and the loons were really calling so much. And I don't know if you've ever heard a loon call on a lake, but it is one of the most haunting, beautiful, heart-tugging, soul-tugging sounds that you can hear. And it was over this camping trip that I just started really, because my moon was late now, right? Okay, so I knew about this conception so much earlier than the other ones, where I was a little bit more in denial. Oh, my moon's just late because, cycles fluctuate. It was not really abnormal at all for my moon time to kind of be off by a couple of weeks from stress or, stuff going on, or even just the moon itself and wanting to line up with a different cycle. But oddly enough, for this entire last year, looking back at my calendar, my moon time was really consistent, which was just like, wow, it was actually consistent.
Yeah.
And here it was not there, and I'm like, I didn't feel like taking a pregnancy test. I really wanted to trust my intuition, because I've had enough experiences over the years where, by now, why am I still doubting? But I was doubting because I didn't think that I could have possibly conceived when I did.
Yeah,
right? So
that's amazing.
It kind of just threw me off a little bit more. But it was really this camping trip, these musings, and between, just being out in nature and really unwinding and unplugging and enjoying, it just kept coming to me, and other things too, like these other beautiful visions that came with it. I was really, the homesteading was really calling me. Like it's been on my mind for a long time, but it was starting to tug at me more than ever. And it's just something that I wanted for my family. And I always kind of, I guess had this kind of hope that maybe, we can kind of take, our life path into that direction and maybe get kind of out of just getting through life, paying the bills and, keeping up, just, keeping everyone fed and really moving into I don't know, enjoying life like to the fullest,
Sure.
of course with hard work, but, and that would, I always thought maybe then there would be an open space for this lingering spirit that I kept kind of sensing to come in. Well, I guess it came a little earlier than I expected. So,
Yeah.
um, that camping trip just kind of, I don't know, it brought up a lot of different things. And I don't know, me and my partner were talking about it and we sensed, this the spirit around, and it was a very gentle spirit. And just we were just kind of talking about, well, if I am pregnant, what kind of plans we would be making. And we were both really on the same level, and it just really felt like this person coming in would bring a lot of blessings. And even though, I lost this baby, it brought a lot
Hmm.
of beautiful blessings and lessons. And
Yeah, they do. They do. I think that's
yeah,
another thing people don't talk about. And it's certainly not something, I think we're all afraid of saying that to somebody. You don't want to say that to somebody that's just had a loss, that good will
right.
come, or, that kind of thing. But personally, I totally agree. I feel like my loss really changed my life in a lot of ways, and reset my path. And I'm just so grateful actually for that experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's right. And I mean, when I got back from our camping trip, it was a couple of weeks later, and I really knew I was pregnant. I mean, I went home once when we were camping, and I had to come home and I had to, check on our chickens and the horse and the garden because we were about an hour from home, right? So I had to kind of keep coming in and go
Right.
back, check on stuff. And I came home to have a shower and just like, wow, like I just felt this ball of light inside my womb. Like, yeah, someone made home here. Like
Yeah.
you just kind of knew, like it felt different. And I was a little bit afraid, of course, the fear of, wow, okay, I know, well, I guess my life is changing a lot now. And at the same time, there was just really an excitement about it at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
And it felt magical. It was surreal again because, wow, how did this even happen? But cool, like I'll roll with it. I will flow with this because I don't believe in accidents. So, like I know that everything that happens for a reason. So it took me a little while in my life to really accept and understand that, but it's kind of been something that's always kept me going, especially through the challenges and the hard stuff, is that, things do happen for a reason. And we probably at the time that they're happening won't be able to see that clearly, but
Right.
to know that and understand that we do choose lessons for ourselves, for our own growth, even before we come here, maybe,
Exactly.
um, it really takes a load off of, kind of almost kind of drowning in what could be a depression, like, I mean, when you're faced with so many challenges and you don't have that sense of connection to something greater, it can be a really depressing place and
Sure.
world to live in.
Sure, sure. And yeah, I totally agree with what you just said too, just the souls coming with lessons that we have agreed on beforehand. At
Hmm.
least that's my belief. I know it's not everyone's, but sounds like it's yours too, that we did actually choose
Yeah.
this. And so, yeah, it's a much more powerful place to be, because you certainly will still feel depressed and, like a
Oh, there's
victim
still
in some
sadness.
moments. Sure,
Yeah.
of course, of
Well,
course.
the sadness and the grief, that's part of, it's
Sure,
normal.
of
It's
course.
it's holding on to it and then enduring suffering from not being able to let go. And that is something, that healing is all about, is, like, the memories are there, your story is there, your
Sure,
feelings are valid of feeling sad. They
sure.
totally are. It's valid.
Well,
It's
we're
the suffering.
human. We're human, and we build up a story, and this baby has, maybe a name, and we do this whole thing that's really normal, but it's a hard story to part with if we have to.
Yes, and this baby did had a story because after I came back from camping, I went and saw Dawn, my friend,
Yeah.
and I did have a reading with her, and she was pretty surprised at my pregnancy at first because we kind of, laughed
Yeah.
about it. I don't know, during a reading over Rowan or something. I don't know, something came up, but she's just like, "Wow, okay, you're having
Change of
another one."
plans.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't know, she tuned in, and that's the first thing she got. I mean, everything that came through that reading was stuff that we were musing about while
Mm,
we were camping. From the homestead to the gentle spirit that this baby was. Very feminine. I'm pretty sure
right.
it would have incarnated as a girl, but that isn't always so. Just because you have, a
Sure.
feminine spirit doesn't mean they're going to be, a
Of course.
female, right?
Right.
But everything was like, it was like my readings for me have just been validations. And I guess it's why I know there's truth there because it's not just something, a storyline that I'm like, okay, willing to accept. It's like, no, I have felt this.
Hmm.
This has come to mind. This is a vision I've had or a gut feeling I've had, or just your heart knows when you hear truth.
Sure.
It's just this feeling that kind of overwhelms you when you just know something is right. You can't really explain this knowing. It's just there. And I've had that many times with my readings with Dawn. So it was really awesome to be validated and to not think that you're crazy because you go through periods of thinking, you're just making stuff up. And that is your doubt, right? Doubt likes
Sure.
to take over and it
Sure.
likes to
Sure.
really get in there and go, oh no, you're just, you're just dreaming or, imagining. And all those things are really important things
Sure.
actually to do,
Well, and it's so
that we
nice
can,
to have someone, that you trust like that, that is kind of like a soul sister. I know I have a similar person in my life,
mm,
and when my baby was, I knew he was gone. Of course, I called her and I was like, "Hey, can you just tell me
right.
what you see on your end?" And she said, "Okay, she said, but you do it too, and then we'll talk. We'll meet back in like another day and we'll talk about what we both saw." So
Yes.
we did, and
Hmm.
to keep it brief, like what I saw and his reason for leaving and what he was doing now and what his purpose was exactly
Yes.
what she told me. And I needed her to reflect it,
Yes. Yes. I
because,
hear you.
yeah, like I do trust myself, and she's not here physically. She didn't really know what was going on. So there was no other way for her to know other than she knows, you know?
Hmm.
So that was so like soul affirming to know that, these whatever kind of things we're feeling and seeing about these kind of situations, like they are real.
Yes.
Yeah,
And just like, everyone has that guidance system there.
sure.
It's just, whether we're aware or mindful. I mean, it's really easy to get caught up in everyday stuff and just not be aware of things. But I mean, one of the things that I saw on my camping trip was these two, like right as me and Mike were talking, and I'm like, yeah, I just really had this feeling I was pregnant. These two eagles flew over me, and it was a mother and her young eagle because they both had different
Yep,
colorings, and they landed right in the trailer or
yep.
on top of the trees above where we had parked our camper trailer. And they were just hanging out there, and then they were playful and they flew away over me, and some of the young ones, baby fluff, flew on
Mm.
me.
Yeah,
Just
gosh,
like,
it's animal
holy
medicine.
moly.
Hmm.
Okay, instant answer here. I was just like, wow. And that's the day that I went home and had a shower, and I could feel this
Yeah,
new life in my womb. And I was like, wow, like the signs are there. It's
sure,
whether we're able to be present enough to
sure.
catch them. The universe and our spirit and our helpers, they're talking to us all the time. And
No, it's true.
it's not like, maybe there are more people that have evolved more over time or lifetimes that are easier to tune into these things, but every human has that potential. We're all wired to be
Yes.
highly intuitive and psychic. They
Yes.
call it, what do they call it? Not paranormal or supernatural, abilities, but they're part of our entire makeup. Like,
Sure.
we have our five senses, but we also have other senses. And I think for the last few thousand years, maybe living on planet Earth, we have not been utilizing our full potential and full capacity like maybe our ancient ancestors actually were at the time, right? I
Right.
mean, they came up with extraordinary knowledge, and they had so much wisdom. It's like, how
Sure.
could they have not been tuned into something,
Sure.
bigger?
Well, and I
So,
think, again, the topic of loss, for some of us really strengthens that ability, and I do agree anybody has access to it, but, on the other hand, it may not be the time to try for the very first time. But I think if you're trusting and willing to go there, and like you said,
yeah.
just look for the signs. I felt like that's all that got me through my months of having my baby in my body was the constant connection to spirit, because the minute I came back into like modern life, I couldn't cope.
Mm,
It made no sense.
right.
And so what about the actual loss, as we talk about this knowing that
Mm,
we have versus kind of like the intellectual knowledge or fears? I know for me, the writing was very clear on the wall that this would happen. My baby told me in dreams. It was like I was constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, kind of. But in my head, I was surprised when it happened. So I'm
yeah.
curious how you felt, because it's sort of shocking, I think, regardless, to like all of a
Well, for
sudden
me,
know.
it, it was definitely a shock because it felt like this baby really wanted to come. Like, it was just like, one of the opening lines to my reading was that it had been planned for a long time. So at that time,
But it did really
I
want to
was,
come,
yeah,
just this way.
I'd never seen that one coming. And, there was physical things that, I just wasn't sure if it was just because this was going to be my fifth baby. I've never had a miscarriage till this one. And I know that there's variations of normal. I know that, things change over time.
Sure.
It did feel like my uterus at sometimes was contracting a little bit more. Like, it started like Braxton Hicks super early, It
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
like, huh. And I mean, I thought maybe it was normal, but I also have had, my pelvis kind of go out of alignment, since my pregnancies. And sometimes when your pelvis goes out of alignment, I mean, it's tugging on ligaments, and, it will, shift over your uterus a bit. I mean, all those muscles and that musculature is all connected. So intricately that, something like that can throw it off and how that
Sure,
feels. So I
sure.
mean, I did get a physio appointment once, and it did feel better, but there were definitely a few things that kind of, made me wonder. And I only had maybe two dreams about this baby, before. And one, I, was holding her in my arms and I called her by her name. And the other one was a reading with Dawn, and she said something about, uh, I wouldn't be able to have this baby naturally or something at home unassisted. And I was just kind of outraged at that dream. How dare I not? Like, I'm not
Right.
having the baby anywhere else. I'm having her at home. But I was just it made me feel really odd. Like, because she said something about the baby was stuck. And I'm like, stuck? Like, what do you mean the baby was going to get
So
stuck?
this
Like,
was a dream, right?
yes, this was a
Yeah.
dream.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it really just the feeling that it leaves, because sometimes it's not,
Right.
what's the symbols or, the visual or even what's said in a dream, it's how it makes you feel. And
Oh
I
my
was
gosh,
just
that's
like,
so true. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, looking back, and it took some reflecting, I did have a lot of chaotic dreams. I had a lot of chaotic dreams of being on the water, and the waves were just crazy. And I think one of the last dreams before this loss, I remember getting this visual of the ocean again, and there was all these ships and all this blood in the water. And
Oh
I don't
wow.
know if the whales were killing humans or the humans were killing whales, but there was a point where I was swimming in the ocean, and I was just like, wow. I mean, it felt so weird because, I mean, underneath me were these giants and they were these whales, and I'm like, it could, like, take me at any moment, and that was my dream, just bloody water. And I was
Wow,
just like,
that's really
whoa, okay.
amazing. That's really amazing.
And I mean, for me, it really revealed itself, and this was, I guess, let's see, not the 16th, the 14th of October. So, it was only a couple of weeks ago, and I I woke up at about 5 a.m. and, went to the bathroom. I mean, this is when my partner gets up to leave for work, and I wiped and there was blood, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is weird. And I told him, and he's just kind of looked at me, and he doesn't show concern right away. Like, a lot of times I
Mm.
can kind of read him. Like, if he thinks that, it's serious, I would know. But he's just like, oh, well, kind of, take it easy, see how it goes. And I just, I
Mm.
felt instantly concerned because I know about variations in normal, even between pregnancies, but this was not my normal. So I couldn't
Yeah.
let it go. And that morning at 5 a.m., I go on Facebook, and
Mm.
there was an unassisted birth page. Maybe I think I, posted on the indie birth
Yeah,
community,
yeah. I remember.
like, is this normal? Like,
Hmm.
and I mean, yeah, I was getting feedback from women who had experienced bleeding during pregnancy, and I was really, really trying
I
to not
know. I
worry.
know.
But I also knew that this has never happened to me before out of 4 pregnancies, so I did find it odd. And well, that weekend I had a lady come up because I was supposed to be hosting a basket weaving workshop, but it just so happened, funny, that there was just not enough interest, and I had to cancel the event this time. I did one previously in the spring, and it was really successful. But she came to my house anyways because we became friends, and she just stayed for the weekend and showed me how to make a round bottom style willow basket. And it was a lot more intricate than the first one. And I found myself kind of having a lot less patience. I found it a little more difficult to concentrate. My bleeding wasn't heavy, but it was minimal, but it's constantly on my mind. Like, okay, I want this to stop now. I want the bleeding to stop
Right.
and just kind of be
Right.
happy and be pregnant. I had just shared the news with everyone like that I knew. Like, even on Facebook, I did, finally announce that, yeah, I'm having my fifth baby. And I just, had told all the parents or the grandparents, I guess, and was ready to just kind of get big, and
Yeah.
enjoy that part of
Yeah.
becoming beautiful and round, and feeling the baby move, and just do all that stuff
I
again, right?
know.
Kind
I
of prep
know.
again for birth and prep for having a beautiful May baby. Like, that was something
Mm.
I dreamt of. Like, if I had another baby, what time of year would that be? Well, spring is kind of cool, plus there's no one born in May of my children or in the entire family.
Mm.
How cool would that be? Plus I like Tauruses, nice earthy, feminine sign. And
Yeah,
it was
that's
all
funny.
lining up.
Sable would have been a mate. He would have been a Taurus as well. It was about a
Oh,
year ago.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
well, look at another common thread in
I
the web,
know.
eh?
I know. That's really beautiful,
Oh,
actually.
yeah. And, the name I picked just went so beautiful with the Taurus constellation, and Pleiades
Mm.
rules Taurus. And, her name would have been Maya. And if she
Mm.
does choose to come back, I might still hang on to that name because
Yeah.
it just came to me. It's what I called her in the dream time, and it just fit almost too perfectly with the astrology. It's just, it's another love of mine, is
Sure.
these messages we've left ourselves behind to remember. Because it seems like coming to this earth plane, coming to planet spaceship earth, there is this um forgetting that you have to go through. It's like I don't know, a protective layer, I don't know, around our experience of being alive or something, that we do have to forget certain things, and we leave ourselves signs to kind of remember, well, what is my purpose here? Like, because there
Hmm.
has to be purpose. This can't all
Sure.
just be happening for no reason, right?
No.
So
Mm.
so anyways, so the weekend was interesting. I mean, I did succeed and I made my basket. I hope I remember everything still, but so that Sunday, Mike, because we go and attend a sweat lodge here. We've been friends with the sweat holders for long. They've become family, and going to a sweat lodge has been, a very big part of our healing journey. And we were able to now incorporate ceremony into our lives a little bit more. I mean, we grew up with nothing of the sorts. We don't have religious roots, and we don't have, spiritual roots like that. It's always been kind of just this innate feeling that we've had both since little, that there's just more to this realm, there's more to life, like there's a bigger picture. So in the last almost 5 years now that we've been going to the sweat lodge, my first time was when I was 17 actually, but Mike always kind of resisted. Like, it was like, no, this isn't calling me, and he doesn't do anything if it's not calling to his spirit. And all of a sudden it just, going to the lodge was calling him very strongly, and he started going. And wow, I mean, the change in him in the last 5 years, he's done a lot of powerful work. He's done 2 traditional fasts under them now, and he even earned a name in the lodge. And I don't know, he's just changed. It's helped him a lot, and it's because he listened to that calling.
Yeah. That's amazing that you guys have that together too.
Yeah, it's been nice kind of, something that we share. And our kids have been, they've been participating too, even if they're not in the lodge or, actively participating in ceremony, they're around and they're absorbing, and I love the lodge so much because, I love birth too, and that's what the lodge represents. It is the womb, you're stepping into the womb and you become spirit again when you're in the lodge. So you can doctor yourself because we are all our own healers. We are our best healers, right?
Yeah, indeed.
And even though we get guidance and help and assistance from other people, our healing is ultimately our own responsibility, and we are our own best healers, our own best doctors, our own best herbalists.
Agreed.
And so that Sunday, Mike went and left to the lodge, and I said, say some prayers for me, figure out, maybe you get a message, or some guidance as to what this is about. And well, he did offer prayers, and that night, Christina left, the basket weaver teacher. She left that afternoon, and I was beat. I was so tired and tuckered out.
Yeah,
so I went and had a nap, and I probably slept for a good 2 hours, and I was still kind of, tired after. But I'm like, wow, pretty tired here. And Mike came home, and I think I went to bed around 9:30 that night, and a little bit more bleeding, but it wasn't like it was gushing. I was like watching for signs like that, right? And so I went to bed at around 9:30 that night, and it was kind of took me a little while to fall asleep, and all of a sudden I was kind of almost, asleep, and I kind of turned over and I felt a funny little pop, and I'm like, I just had a bad feeling right away. And so I went to the bathroom, and as soon as I sat down, there was my baby just right there.
Wow.
Hanging there. And it took a double take because, I was kind of already falling asleep, so I was kind of, spacey, right? And I looked, and I'm like, could it be something else? And, her body turned a bit, and, we could make out a face. I'm like, oh my God. And unfortunately, my eldest son's bathroom, or his bedroom, is right across from my bathroom, right? And I'm really, really open with my kids. Right. There's not much I censor with them.
Right. I'm the same way.
Yeah, I'm honest about all my feelings, whether they're anger, rage, love, my passions. And I told them, look, kids, mommy's experiencing a bit of bleeding. It could lead to losing the baby. But it doesn't have to. When I told them that when I went to have my nap, right? Because I just need to take a bit of time. Can you please, keep everything kind of under control?
Right.
So as soon as, my son Sequoia, he heard me, and I kind of, maybe I howled, I don't know. And he's like, "Are you losing the baby?" And he was so sad
Oh,
about it,
sweet
the way he
boy.
said it. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." But there's nothing I can contain about my emotions when I'm feeling them. I really can't. And,
Well, isn't it
you
so
know,
important that our children experience this as well? I mean, don't you think
yeah,
it would not be doing anyone a service to not talk
hide
about
it.
it or hide it, just like you
Mm-mm.
explained, you experienced when you were a child? We don't want to repeat those things if we can help it.
No, but I don't also want them to feel invalidated. Like, I mean, I'm sure a lot of us, even when we were little growing up, there's things we felt, and yet what people would say and how they would act would not match how we felt, and it would create confusion.
Right,
So, how
right,
are we supposed to trust what we feel when people are so good at masking
right.
things that they don't want us to know? Well, I didn't never wanted that for my kids. Like, everyone knows what it feels like to feel tension in a room.
Sure,
And
sure.
no one is saying anything, so okay, well then you just write it off as, oh, this is just me, right?
Right.
And that begins the confusion that we go through in life, is we need to learn to trust our feelings and maybe take some of those masks off. And that's kind of what I've always wanted from my kids, is I'm just going to be honest so you don't have to guess.
Sure,
So
sure. Well, that's beautiful, and I think in this situation too, I think honesty is the most beautiful thing to be. This is just life.
and it's a tough thing to be honest, like it takes a lot of courage to be honest, because sometimes it makes you have to say things or bring things up that are very uncomfortable, which no one likes to be uncomfortable. But I mean, really, if you really want authenticity and honesty, unfortunately, being uncomfortable at times is part of it. And that takes courage, especially when you're sensitive to other people's feelings, because you don't want to feel their hurt. Like, maybe what you're saying, you're not intending to hurt anyone with your honesty,
Sure.
but sometimes it happens. So yeah, I went and got Mike after that, and I woke him up because he was, sleeping and getting prepared for another crazy week of work. He works really long hours in the bush, so,
Mm,
and he just kind of got up, and I really felt him being really sensitive to being present with me, and he's very empathic. And part of what he asked for in the lodge is, one of his gifts. And one of his gifts might be along the lines of being able to carry other people's stuff. And that's exactly what he did for me. Not that
oh,
he
wow.
has to carry, just that aspect of
Sure.
transmutating energy. And it should never be taken lightly. You should never, ever have to take on someone else's stuff. But in this case, he couldn't help it. Like, I was in the bathroom and I wasn't bleeding at first. Like, my baby was still attached to me, but there was no blood till I came back to the bathroom, and I just kind of squatted on on the bathroom floor, and the blood started, and I was just like, wow. Like, I was definitely, in disbelief that this was happening. Like, am I really
Sure.
awake? Like, is this really happening? And, of course, your immediate emotions are like, why? And why is this happening? Like, I
Yeah.
don't understand. And he really took that on, and it's like he purged it out for me. And it was like, wow, it's happening. But, he did take that energy and some of the fear, it kind of left me. And after, there was just more of a calm. Like, I mean, I had to accept what was happening,
Sure.
at some point in time. But it was hard. And my daughter came. She probably wasn't even sleeping yet. She's kind of a night owl. She's my eldest and only daughter. And
Yeah.
she
How old
came
is
into
she?
the she'll be 12 in February, so
Mm-hmm.
she's still only 11 right
Yeah.
now. And always been, very honest with her. And she was there that and saw me through, having to let go of my beloved dog Nanook there when he died last year,
Right.
also in October. Like,
Wow. Yeah.
and she was really there for me. Like, that one really shocked me too. And she's just was there and let me express my feelings and just listened. And she was in the bathroom with us, and I told her, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be. And she just,
Sure.
she chose to stay. she got me a water bottle because that's all I could think of. Okay, well, maybe, hot water bottle once I can actually. It took a while. Like, it was about 2 hours of bleeding.
Sure,
And
sure.
I ended up, going into my bathtub instead of being on the bathroom floor there, and I just kind of waited because the baby was still, like, the fetus was still attached to me, and I was kind of like gently trying to tug on it to release it, but I didn't really want to
Sure.
tug very hard. So I just kind of squatted and held her there for a while. And once the baby released, I was just holding her in my hand, and I just sat in the tub and just allowed the flowing to flow, I just and I remember Mike asking me at some point, is there someone you want me to call, or should we go somewhere? And I was just like, no, I don't want to go anywhere. Like, this just needs to happen here. Like, I couldn't have imagined going anywhere for that. It wouldn't have been the same. I don't think I would have been able to release, emotionally the way I did. It would have just really prolonged the process. I really trusted that my body knew what to do. And
Sure. Well, and you were so present. Well, I'm sure you were in a lot of ways, and that's perfect too. But you know what I mean? Present in a way to not freak out and to not like just pull the baby or anything, because, clinically that's kind of what we all worry about, is just a placenta that stays in and a baby that doesn't.
Right.
But for you, like, just however you needed to process that time for your body to release was, of course, the smartest thing you could have ever done. And, there's a lot that can go wrong there. So I'm glad that you were able to have that experience.
Yes, and it did take an immense amount of trust, and the more I think we fight ourselves again in this respect, the harder that can be. And of course, you really have to watch for those signs, like, and it doesn't always unfold this way, but it can, it's just like unassisted birth. I mean, there are no
guarantees.
Exactly.
No.
So,
and that's funny, I don't know if I told you, or maybe you read it in my story, but I had a similar thing where the sac and the baby were hanging out of me for a pretty long time. And it was the same waiting and just shutting the door on everyone and just letting my body decide to do the rest. It was surreal. I had never experienced anything in the birth process like that before.
Wow. Yeah, and you know what? Looking and judging, my baby, it looked like a 10-week-old fetus. It didn't look 12 weeks yet. There seems to be a huge change in development in between that time, and I couldn't even tell you if I did see a placenta, because it just was all, there was so much blood and so many clots, it's like I couldn't, I see my baby, but after that, it's like I didn't know what was what. It was just one big bloody river.
Yeah, exactly. That is how it looks.
So what was really interesting is, of course, I had tried to get a hold of Dawn earlier about the bleeding, but Dawn doesn't go on Facebook, and I just kind of left it, and I just kind of wanted to see how things unfolded. So I did contact her, and I'm like, maybe we can check in on baby, make sure everything's okay, but she didn't get that message. So my next message was, I lost the baby. And she was kind enough to to tune in. And this is after we did our ceremony that I got this message, which I'll get into. But I just wanted to bring this up now because we're talking about the placenta. So she kept getting this image like the baby couldn't implant itself. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird, right? Because, I mean, the embryo's already implanted itself. But what I learned, and I had no idea before, so I had to research this after, was that I guess the placenta takes over at around 10 weeks.
Right.
And I didn't know that. 4 pregnancies later, and I didn't know that. I keep forgetting what the embryo, what sustains it is the lining in the uterus, or I can't.
It's the yolk sac, I believe.
Okay.
But I mean, it's a huge transition, right? Even in a spiritual sense, now that you know that, to think of what that might mean for a being or a soul to have that transition or not.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
So I just found that interesting because it kind of confused her too. She's like, wow, okay. I don't really understand because I thought you were already implanted. So I shared that with her after. She's like, wow, that makes
Yeah.
so much sense. And so the baby was, the spirit of the baby. I can't call it a baby because it's not, a baby, but it
Right.
was going to be a baby. She
Right.
was just saying, yeah, like I couldn't attach. My placenta couldn't attach to the uterus. The uterus was too slippery. And I'm like, well, wow. Okay. Well, like I said, the timing of conception, everything was a little off. So it's like,
Sure. It makes sense in that
maybe
way.
the hormones weren't quite right, not right enough to make it viable and fertile and, easy enough to sustain the growth of this baby.
Sure.
So
Sure. And that's such a tricky place, I think, for your brain and your heart to be. I'm sure you felt that way, right? Like, spiritually you
yeah,
have kind of these explanations and things make sense, but then physiologically you'd like to know more. And if this happened, then why didn't this happen? And what could I have done or not? And
yeah,
it just kind of all gets wrapped up together.
yeah. Well, my biggest concern was, oh, this baby, this spirit of this baby. Maybe they're just like, oh, this is too crazy for me. I'm not coming in, But it wasn't like that. And I mean, every story is going to be unique and
Sure.
different, and there's
Sure.
going to be, different reasons. But I do feel this one will come back at a better time, and maybe in hindsight, wow, maybe I've jumped in too early. Maybe there's another time and place where things will just be ripe and perfect. Whatever that means. But like that's kind of the message that came through, and that there is a huge physiological component to this.
Sure.
Like sometimes it is biology, and timing. I mean, timing is always of the essence, it
Sure.
seems, with
Sure.
every project. So yeah, it was a very raw, intense, powerful, and humbling experience.
Mm.
And I've never known this place before, and it was maybe a few months before I even found myself pregnant that I had someone come to me and ask me for, I don't know, advice. Someone that she knew was
Sure.
possibly miscarrying. And I'm like, I don't have any advice for you because
Hmm.
most of the advice that I can give is from my own experience. And I've never had the experience. So there wasn't really anything I could pass on besides just, trusting at that time. So it was interesting how it all kind of came together, and October being, pregnancy and infant loss month. Like I
Mm.
kept seeing that come up after, started bleeding, and I'm like, wow, this is really in my face. Like maybe I should
Sure.
be preparing myself somehow because this is another sign that, something might be going on, and just how I felt when I saw that. And I have a birth page too where I just like sharing articles. I share a lot of indie birth stuff on there. And that was something I did share, October being infant loss month.
Right,
And
right. No,
yeah, it
that's
was just
funny you say that. I remember, I usually share it too every year. And last year, I was pregnant and I shared it because this is important, not because it had just happened to me. And so it was a strange foreshadowing. I had a bunch of people just
mhm.
message me and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I was like, "No, I'm still pregnant, but it's infant loss month." It was a
Oh,
very
wow.
strange thing. And then it was, like 3 or 4 weeks later. So
Yeah.
very, how these things interplay, we'll never know. But yeah,
All right. And you just kind of, all you can do is, stay in the flow with it and see, because you are walking into the unknown. And that's really what the space has felt like, is like, after, it was a birth I had. I
sure,
did
of
feel like
course.
I was suspended between two worlds. It's only now that I'm kind of feel like I'm coming back to earth, and feeling more grounded. And doing the ceremony, we ended up having a fire ceremony the next day. So I just, kind of took my little baby fetus, and I wrapped it up and I put it, in a safe place till I knew what my next step was. And Mike is a real connection to fire and always has. And fire, I mean, what a transformative,
Mm,
elemental symbol it is anyways. It's cleansing, it's it's powerful, it's transforming. And Mike has learned through the lodge how to build a fire with an altar. And we had a rock, and they're called grandfathers. They're used in the lodge because they're usually made kind of out of like a lava type rock. Like they, you can't just put any rock into the fire. They
Right.
might, burst and shatter and
Yeah.
explode in the fire. So we were gifted one of those rocks for, whenever we would have fire kind of ceremonies and for smudging and stuff like that. And so we decided, because burial just didn't feel quite right, even though, it crossed my mind to, bury the body under my new apple tree. But there was just something about burial that just didn't feel right this
Yeah.
time. And then I'm like, fire. And he's like, yeah, that already crossed my mind. And
Yeah. Did you
yeah,
know we did the same thing?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of all the
it just,
choices, we just
yeah.
waited until something came, and that was Jason's choice. I kind of put that on him. I mean, not in a bad way, but I was like, look, I've done all this and birthed this baby, and now you are going to decide how we, have
Right.
this ceremony. And he chose fire as well, and so that's what we did.
Well, and it really, holy cow, that was powerful, because we laid, the baby's body on tobacco and juniper is just it's a plant, beautiful for cleansing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it just felt right. And we offered our, tobacco and prayers, and cried a little and held each other, and
Oh, how
just said
nice.
what we needed to say. And wow, like it really lifted a layer off. Like, you could breathe again a little bit, because it just felt really right. And it's really hard to describe, but some kind of ceremony to acknowledge, like, that this happened, whether you have a body, I guess, or not, doesn't matter, but to acknowledge it
Right.
as, that you did give birth and you were pregnant and there was a connection, and just to honor that in whatever way, comes more natural. It doesn't really matter what the ritual is, as long as the heart is there.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and that, I think, is one of the most amazing, pieces of your story, is doing it that way and sharing it. And we agreed, not everybody has to do that the same way at all, but having
Hmm.
the space to feel like that's something that can be done. I think in the mainstream world, which of course neither of us are super connected with, women have losses all the time, and their babies are taken from them in the hospital. There's never any kind of evidence that the baby existed, and they don't
Mm.
have support or maybe counseling to create any sort of memory. And so it becomes this beyond traumatic event where it's almost like it never happened.
Yeah, well, you don't get that closure,
Right.
like, and the sad thing is as in an important role that, our Western kind of allopathic medical model can play when it comes to life-saving situations, when it comes to true healing, and especially acknowledging that emotional and spiritual aspect to loss, to even just healing the physical body, it has no knowledge of that.
Right.
It's just completely void of understanding these spaces as sacred. I mean, look at birth. Like
Yeah.
that, how long have we been giving birth now? And this model of care still hasn't acknowledged to
Right.
keep that space sacred, like,
No,
to
it's
keep
so
it
true.
sensitive, to keep it gentle. I mean, we need the compassion and the sensitivity here in these important, very raw and vulnerable times in our
Right.
lives. We don't need more aggressive or, kind of harsh and cold treatments when it comes to being so open and vulnerable.
Right.
And I, it's the only reason I'm like really sharing this too, is I don't like talking about myself a whole lot. I'm usually more of a listener than a talker, but it became evident really fast to me that women need a space to talk about this, because I had
Yeah.
people message me or comment and, saying, yeah, I've had a lot. I had no idea they lost a
Right.
baby. Wow.
Right.
We never talked about this to
Right.
anyone. Or, someone else who's been, was kind of traumatized by her experience because, she did go septic and needed, all this medical treatment, and
Sure.
she almost, died herself because the infection was spreading so much, and still traumatized 5 months after because the sensitivity for what she was going through emotionally, even though they helped her physically, it wasn't there, and she just hasn't been able to process that. So I was like, wow,
Sure.
like, we really do need to talk about this, because
Yeah.
it should be acknowledged, not just like something you're hiding in the closet, or you feel like you have no right to speak about it because
Mm.
you never held your baby, or like it's like it matters less than if your child who's you've has grown has died or something. But no, I think it
Sure.
needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And obviously, thank you for sharing your story. And, I know we're Skyping apart, but for creating this sacred space, I feel, with me tonight to share that, I can feel our connection, and I'm sure anyone listening can as well, because it's a powerful story, and your way of telling it has been beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing what you have. And I was thinking we'll probably link to your blog post. That would be helpful. Yes.
Yeah, that would be cool. I mean,
Yeah.
a little bit more. Writing is nice because you get to really think about and kind of step back and read and kind of alter things and kind of really lay down what you want to say. And it's just kind of easier
Yeah.
sometimes to express yourself because you get to just kind of let it flow out. But
Sure.
it's been really humbling to be able to, to share this and to know that although this journey is your own when you're losing a baby, or whatever you're going through, but losing a child like this has been my own journey. But I know I'm not alone because I'm standing with so many women who've gone through this before me, so I know I'm not alone. And
Yeah.
that has been just as helpful, and to just give yourself the space to kind of take a break and rest between the stories of your life. Because I mean, for me, within a 3 month period, my life trajectory changed
Hmm.
intensely twice.
Sure.
From we are inviting another baby and another, child into our family. I mean, that takes you on a completely different path.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, okay, well, and all of a sudden that story that you were already kind of forming is taken from you. And now you're in this pause. And that's why I think I called it kind of walking between worlds, because that is what it felt like. You have to, and unfortunately, it seems like our Western culture or just our society doesn't really allow for pauses. It's like, okay, it's done now, get back to your life kind of thing. But
Sure.
it's not like that. You do feel like you're really in a suspended pause for a while till
Well, there's
you know
no way that it's supposed to go. There's no time frame that you're magically healed or better. So for some people it'll be shorter or longer, but that's, I think, that feeling of just being, like you say, suspended in time. Like, what's next? You don't know.
no, you don't know. And I think you know the more you can just kind of embrace and accept that for the time being, you don't need to know anyways. You just kind of
Sure.
just allow yourself to really just be, and to just be gentle with yourself till you find your roots again. Because I mean, although my spiritual roots are very deep, it really felt like my physical self was completely uprooted. Like I'm like a
Oh,
plant
yeah.
just
Yeah.
laying on the ground going, oh my gosh, like I have no ground beneath me. What am I doing? Uh,
Yeah.
so in that space, I think the more we try to push and figure out, sometimes the harder it is to kind of find your roots again, like,
Yeah.
and just to kind of be okay. And all right, one step in front of the other, and just to kind of just keep walking and just being open and seeing what comes, because it is unknown.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a perfect way, I think, to wrap this up for the time being, it's exactly that, unknown. But again, thank you for sharing this really personal story. And because this really wasn't that long ago, just best wishes and love on continued processing and healing, as I know it goes for a while. And again, thanks for sharing this really just sensitive and beautiful story. I think it will touch a lot of people.
Yes, thank you again for letting me share this story, and I do hope that there are parts of it that might be able to help someone else who's standing in the same place that I was standing in just a little while ago, and to know that you're not alone, and it takes time, and there are no timelines to healing and grieving, but the more that we can surrender and the more that we can just accept, the easier it'll be for our own healing in the long run. That's really the only. What other advice do you have? It's like, just slowly, allow yourself to accept and find some kind of inner peace within it all, knowing that on some level, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Yeah.
understand it right away. Allow the, emotion. I think the biggest part is just don't suppress any of your emotions. Let them come up. If we allow, our emotions to kind of come up and we acknowledge them, then in the long run we'll have less baggage to carry around. The load won't be as heavy if we just let it happen when it wants to happen. So.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed.
Yeah, it's weird, there's times I'm like, wow, did this even happen? Everything happened so fast, and you feel like you're kind of in a dream space, sort of, where it's like, wow, am I awake yet? Did this actually happen, or was it a dream? But it's very interesting. It's very interesting, and I do feel, a closeness to the spirit still, and I will continue on with the blessings and the visions I was gifted while carrying that baby. I'll keep, going towards what I saw and what came up. I will find some land and make that homestead for my family. So, in good time. I mean, that's super unknown territory too, as life is. So.
Right. That is, I think, the ultimate lesson, right? All in time. So, well, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Sabrina's story today. We're going to link her blog below this podcast so you can read at your leisure. So thanks again, Sabrina, and take care, everybody. Check the Indie Birth site for up-to-date information and the new Indie Birth Midwifery School, which is indiebirthmidwiferyschool.com. Thanks. Have a great day.